We interrupt this program to bring you the Design Hustle podcast, conversations around successful design journeys. Take it away, Ali.
Stefan Barak, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ali, for having me.
Thank you so much for saying yes to this. Means a lot. Just before we went online, I was asking you about the name, your surname. That's very interesting. So, you mind telling us where it's from, what the background is?
Well, originally, my father's father came from Croatia, but then I researched into my family tree during gymnasium, and I found out that my ancestors came out of the Arabic world and out of Persia, and settled like around about 500 years ago in Dubrovnik, and that's why. Because I always wondered, why do we not fit in there? Because there's a lot of 2-meter people, 2-meter plus people in the city-state of Dubrovnik. And it made no sense because most of the other Slavic people don't go to 2 meters height and don't have paler skin and brown hair. But basically, that's the backdrop from where we stem from originally. So it's Barac. And my sister insists, no, it's Barac. She's a full Croatian on that side. So there's a family dispute going on always.
That's amazing. I think there should always be something to keep the family together, and a little dispute is perhaps
exactly.
Every Christmas dinner you pick up the topic. So great. Stefan, so one of the most important things that we can immediately get into, I got really fascinated by your brand, and I say that with full commitment, and because I feel as a designer, there are very few people out there who have a very clear brand, and I guess you have a very strong story behind it. However, I'd like you to sort of try to introduce yourself to non-designers. How do you introduce yourself? What do you do?
Thank you, first of all. And to non-designers, it depends. Is like the most unwanted answer, but it depends on the person I see in front of me. When people expect me to be a designer in their eyes, and they see design as something, okay, they do something visual, then I complete the tasks that they want me to complete, and I just ask questions towards alternative modalities that are open up. What do I mean with that? How about the acoustics in designing interactions between machines and men? Because I mostly worked in the automation of machine industry and medical industry. Or how about tactile? How about this? How about that? And then they get the gist towards where I'm going. And on other conversations, when people understand design in the way that I understand it, is like solving problems. Then basically I just say, I'm a problem solver. I have my fortitude in behavioral economics. And I love to make the world more accessible for many more people.
Oh, that's a very strong one. The last one, making the world accessible for everyone, or for more people. That's amazing. Can you take us sort of back into your childhood? Were you always a creative person or more of a mechanical person? So what was your childhood like?
So both. I was fascinated with both. I loved to sketch and draw. I loved to be alone. So I loved mathematics, I loved physics, and chemistry. I was always good in that, could see the patterns in that. And recently, like past few years, I found out why. Because basically, I've been diagnosed with sort of an autism spectrum, or being on the autism spectrum. And now many more things make sense. So, but the prevalent thing was I loved to do things where I could just reclude to myself. And in mathematics or in creativity, I could sit there and just paint or just do my math for hours alone without having to bother with other people.
Like I can totally relate to it. I was a bit of a loner myself in that respect. I liked to do things on my own with the power of daydreaming, I would say. Like, that's
Oh,
the
nice.
added sprinkle on the top where I could imagine myself with other people without actually having to be with other people, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. And so who sort of pushed you towards design or engineering?
It was, um, I don't even know if it was more an external push. I think my parents played a crucial role in that because they let me be. And like, because the normal way in our family would have been, okay, either you're becoming a lawyer or a doctor. So that's the only respectable things. Or if you're not in that profession, then you're going to be a teacher, because this is also respectable. I didn't even know of the terminology designer back then because I come out of a small village in Carinthia, which is southern Austria in the Alps, and their architecture is something very um, elusive. Architecture, what that's your background, is already seen as something for the rich people, and that was the maximum that I knew that was present. And it was basically just also through a friend, a fatherly friend, who then tutored me in my youth, and he was my cycling instructor, and he showed me how to repair the bikes, what to take care of myself, and gave me a big push towards mechanical engineering. And then I thought, hey, I like to solve problems in mechanics because it makes me happy to just fix things. And so it was more like finding my way through little nudges. Also in school, like the tests showed that I'm mathematical quite good and can solve complex problems. And then the suggestion of the teachers was also like maybe architecture, maybe mechanical engineering. And when I came to Vienna to like apply for mechanical engineering and for architecture, then I found out, oh, there's something called industrial design, which is basically in between mechanical engineering and product design, meaning fixing things or services that are not good or broken currently. And yeah, from that point on, I think I was doomed. And then I met my mentor, Hartmut, and yeah, he's because I was always like interested in the other's opinion, in the people's opinion who use things and who have to access things. And he was one of the as one of the first, I think, in the economy to really go for user experience. So he was a huge influence, him and his wife, for me as a student, where he said, it's not for you, it's for other people. And you got to test, you got to see if it works. And if you like it, nobody cares if you like it, what you're producing. It just matters that people are able to access and use what you produce. Otherwise, you're useless.
Very strong. I think that's the lesson you learned much earlier because some of us had to learn that much later. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to learn because like when I was young, of course I was arrogant. Still am. My wife tells me every day that I'm very arrogant in many ways. And I thought I had the perfect solution, and then I had to find out within like one testing, maybe not so good if 4 out of 5 cannot access. Maybe I've done something wrong, and that's in the beginning I thought it's their problem, and then I found out no, it's not their problem. It's me because I cannot communicate properly so that other people understand me. It's always the sender who's doing something insufficiently.
Yeah. So the comment about your wife, I think what worked for me was I changed the topic to I'm constantly dissatisfied with things. So
Yes.
it's not arrogance, it's dissatisfaction with inherently everything that I see and I'm surrounded by. And that's why I'm a designer because I'm I see I see problems everywhere, right? As in,
Yes.
and that makes me look and sound arrogant, right? So this works with my wife, by the way. So I'm like, okay, I'm not arrogant, I'm just dissatisfied. So I think because we have a lot of parallels in that. I'm not 2 meters tall, though. I think that's a huge difference. But the rest, like growing up, doing things on my own, and then daydreaming, and then suddenly someone coming in and showing the way, for that adventure. And so that sort of brings me to your professional career now. So by this time, you had been exposed to Vienna, a bigger city, and you were open to the world now. So how were the next steps for you?
Basically, just like I did my first diploma in 2008 with Hartmut, and against his wishes, he said, "You need 2 more years." But I was like, "Okay, I'm ready. I gotta go." I had to emancipate myself from him, and then I went to Italy into a master's program in Lamborghini. Because I thought at that point I really wanted to become a car designer, because I thought that's the pinnacle. I can learn there how to really design products, and even if I'm dissatisfied with cars no more, I can then move into another area easily, because I'm going to be able to visually transport my problem solving. And then after that, I was really dissatisfied with design by itself, because I found out that designing cars is just about like styling and not solving real problems. And then I moved on to Germany to Opel as an engineer. So I fell back onto the whole mechanical engineering to solve problems. And yeah, that's what I did for a few years. I was immediately hired out of Opel by a sub-company of Bosch, where then I was interested in engineering electric vehicles. It was like 2010. And from 2010 until 13, I did that. And there was already like my encounter with accessibility that always came back, because in mechanical engineering, we then in Germany were taught to just design for machine access and not for maintenance or for repairing anything. And I was asked, like, but how is a mechanical repair guy or a technician going to do that? How are the people going to do that? And then what I was told was like, too many questions, too expensive. We cannot afford that. We won't do that. Goodbye. And so I started my own company and trying to fix those problems on my own.
Question, sorry, Stefan, I'm going to jump in here. So,
yes,
and I saw this immediate jump, right? So this is this young kid who's just started working 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
Where did you get the confidence from saying like, hey, by the way, let me start this, and I've got something to share with the world. So what was that decision like?
It was basically just like looking at the market and seeing if there's anybody out there who's doing it. And I was like, nope, nobody doing it. And when you're young, you're just like, okay, let's try. Let's just go for it. And I didn't have any kids at that time, and I do now, as you can see, with a bear. And still, I'm curious. I'm just curious to see, like, can we fix that problem or not? So it doesn't matter. Like, my goal is to be of service, and to in the end of my life, I will be satisfied when I will have helped more people. And if you ask me then, like, how many more, then I'll answer the manager's answer when they are asked for how much more money do you want. I'll say more people. I want to help more people. I want to help society develop into a more social direction, avoiding the path of saying good and bad, because I believe that there is no good and bad. I believe that there's pro-social and asocial, as there is some protagonists and antagonists, but good and bad. We all do good and bad things, but for many reasons that are pro something and against something else. So, yeah. And that was, I think I never cared. And my mother was always very, very scared of that. She was like, but you need a job and you need to do something for security, and what's going to happen with you, as mothers say. But I think I never had that.
So you decided to become a consultant for accessible design.
Yeah, and also a doer. Like in the beginning, I thought,
Okay.
okay, I'm going to help you fix this. So by doing it for you and for companies. And then I painfully found out that it's not possible to fix something from the outside, because it's not a technological problem, it's not a design problem, it's not a budget problem. It's a social problem, a cultural problem inside the companies. And as an external, I was never able to fix the culture inside the company, and that was my biggest learning over the past 10 years. That there need to be internal forces that are striving towards a more accessible world. And secondly, that accessibility is not about fixing people who are so-called people with disabilities, but fixing the mindset inside a company. Give you an example. If everybody of us knew sign language, people like deaf people or hard of hearing people would not have any communications problems as severe as they have them now. And cochlear implants and those kind of things that help people who are hard of hearing to gather sounds might be technological solutions for some people who choose it, but might not be the right fit for everyone, or are definitely not the right fit for everyone. But if we change our social behavior, then we are able to include more. And that's what I found out, and that's why I gave up then on producing products for problems that people inside companies didn't even know that they had. And then I moved on to consulting or nudging them from the outside. So, but that was a 10-year kind of pasture. In between came a lot of stints inside companies where I tried to do it from the inside of the companies as well.
That's awesome. Because I've worked as an external in a few companies, and so I understand the challenges, because you can never infiltrate the culture per se, right? Because and most of these bigger organizations are top down hierarchical structures where you are just means to an end, right? So that's why you're an external, right? So it's very difficult to then change the mindset from the top, right? So and this sort of made you sort of go into the consultancy model, where probably the plan was to now train them, to give them workshops, tell them like what this is, how they can internally create a difference, and then you become a facilitator, correct?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So the goal is basically to make them independent and grow something inside every company, as you just beautifully said. And just giving them informations about, okay, maybe you do this certification, but you also have to go into talks and tests with people with different disabilities to learn how about their culture, because it's a whole different culture set. Like hearing impaired, like most hearing impaired people I know now, don't even consider themselves as people with disabilities. They say, hey, we have a culture, we have a sign language. You're just not part of our culture.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, because it's correct. It's like, going into another country, not understanding the language, and somehow you feel excluded. But it's quite arrogant of us to look at them in a very exclusive sort of a group, like
Yeah.
In fact, we are the people who are opting not to be part of their communities, right? In that
Yeah.
respect, yeah, that's a mindset shift moment for me as well to look at this. Um, so. So now tell me, when you're working with companies, so one of the biggest challenges probably that you have is to convince what is the ROI for what you're doing. So why would someone pay you as a company? Because you're not like a sustainability expert who comes in and says you save carbon taxes and then this at the end of the thing you get these breaks and da da da. So what you're talking about are tangible things that would probably require money, but at the end of the day you just get brownie points for good karma, right? To make products more accessible, or is there something else? How do you convince people?
Oh, managers are easiest convinced by more money, um, more turnover. So, what accessibility measures are is money machine because it ups performance of technological systems. Because if we talk just simply about digital accessibility, it's about cutting code, it's about cleaning code, and it's about cleaning the offerings that are presented to the eyes and the ears of the people consuming or operating with it if it's a B2B solution. So first of all, the performance of the machine is going to be faster. The performance of the humans behind the machine is going to be faster. That's why B2B accessibility was always number one sales option. Like in industrial automation, you want less people killed by the machines. That's a fact. And the more effective a machine can react or a human can react to the machine's interface, the more likely it is, or the less likely it is that the person will be killed or severely injured. And in the economical sense, it's a huge group of potential buyers. There is roughly in Switzerland, or let's say Europe, there's roughly in between 20 to 30% of diagnosed people with disabilities officially. And then also stack up to that there in Switzerland, for example, there's roughly like 26 to 29% of people with migrational background or history. They do not speak the language like German in here in the Zurich part or French in the part to the west. And they need simpler language. Then there's 10% of people on top that are dyslexic or having problems in other kind of reading or language areas. 10% out of 8 million or 9 million in Switzerland. So that's a huge number. And if they get, there's like the difference between simple language and easy language. So if you cater to both, then it's a low investment with a high output because accessibility is more a 0 and a 1 kind of number, so 100% or 0%, not like in usability. It's not intangible. Okay, how much do we perform a little bit better? No, it's either 0 people can access or 1 person can access, which makes 1 more turnover or 1 more potential for, what's it called in English? If you don't have like specialists for a job, or if they are hard to get in your workforce, then and you widen your field and you make it accessible for more people, then you can solve that problem of having too little resources of people.
So you get generalists instead of specialists to do some of the work.
No, they might be specialists. A friend of mine, for example, he's birth blind and he's a developer. He's a back-end developer and he can code very fast. And he brings his own devices. He just needs some adjustments in the workplace if people give him the chance, and just take those precautions. They don't even cost that much, near to nothing. And in that kind of sense, I argument, and then I say specific numbers to those managers and say to them how much potential is in there for them to improve those numbers. And that those are the hard facts that I bring. It's like, okay, you can feel good because you're doing something that is valuable in a social kind of scale, and you're also making more money with it.
Makes sense to have like a tangible ROI attached to making a digital product accessible to maybe like say 20% more people, like on a good day. That would be great. But is there a way for them to measure if there has been an increase?
Yes, there is ways, but first of all, we have to see potential doesn't make the actual turnover. So people will have to know that your platform is then accessible for them. So that takes time. And or excessive marketing for you to communicate as a company, hey, we got this accessible solution, please test it out. If you go to a group, a non-profit group, for example, there's a lot in Switzerland, like the SZB, for example. And if you want to cater to blind users and say, hey, please, people in this non-profit group, would you do us the favor of testing it out and recommending it? So you got to spread the word that you have the open channels.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, but do you feel inclusivity is so equity, inclusivity is part of accessibility in that respect?
I think the other way around. I think accessibility is part of inclusion and equity and diversity. Because in some points, like example, red-green blindness or nearsightedness or farsightedness, accessibility is sexist. So more women are prone in their youth towards farsightedness, whereas more men are prone towards nearsightedness. Then there's many more red or green or blue or yellow blind men than women, like thousands more, because it's almost like 10%. So and that's not a small group where you can help people have an easier life, and by helping them have an easier life, it's basically less hospitalizations for them, less breakdowns, less stress. They're going to be living longer, so less costs on the secondary scale for the social system in total as well.
That's fascinating. All the numbers and figures that you're quoting, it's unbelievable how we all have a blind spot, because it's almost like when if you don't get sick, you don't know what's going on in the hospital, right? And how
Exactly.
good or bad the experience is. Until one fine day you have a surgery and you're like, oh my God, someone needs to come in and improve this, right? And I think it's this world, and when I talk about this, I talk in terms of your numbers, 20% of this world that we don't know of, right? And I do believe I include myself in bits and pieces. So let me share some of my experiences and tell me how do you convince someone like me that technically I'm part of a group, number one, without me feeling as if it's some sort of a mark, like, so I still want to benefit from the system without really feeling as if it somehow takes anything away from me. So, for example, I've lived in multiple countries. So when I moved, so I'm from Pakistan. I moved to Dubai. I was there working as an architect for 8 years, and I felt within the amazing geographical mixed pot that we had in a company. We still had categories of people who were from certain countries getting more than the second tier countries and then the third tier countries. And there was definitely this idea of seeing color, which is okay. It's just there everywhere. So I had to shatter through a lot of glass ceilings in my life, right? So and they could be based on, oh, well, your education sucks, right? So, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to whitewash it by doing my master's from Switzerland. So, the things that I had to do. This company now, but if you work for a British company in design, then, let me work for a British company. Like, let's get the stamps. to a point where I just became thick-skinned, and I'm like, I don't care, right? So
Yeah.
what you see is what you get. But there are a lot of other people at a younger age, because I had to, like as you said, I had to go through that painful lesson of,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So is this also part of inclusion in terms of products, would you say? And how would someone like me feel more included, let's say?
Yeah. I mean, there's a difference between accessibility and inclusion because accessibility is about getting barriers, technological wise or social wise, out of the way for people who have physical, so-called official disabilities.
Yeah.
So if you're hard of hearing, if you have visual impairments, or if you're like me on the autist spectrum and have cognitive disabilities with, for example, my fine motorics, then that's accessibility. Inclusion is a much wider area and also a very political one. So the sad answer is, hey, get used to people putting you in categories because that's how humankind has survived for millions of years now. It's like our coping mechanism. I see Stefan. Okay, he's 2 meter. That's a danger. Okay. Oh no, he's nice. Okay, he's not a danger. Then I'm immediately categorized, boxed. And of course, everyone, like Swiss people, think Swiss education at the ETH and the UZH are the highest forms of educations that you can get in the world. Yeah? And of course, my coping mechanism was then just to go into those institutions and to also prove that I'm part of this group, that I'm allowed to sit at the table. And I think that won't change that fast. Maybe in 1,000 years, maybe in 3 or 10. I rather think it's 10 or 100,000 years because we still have a long way to go. So, yeah, but we have it so much easier than our parents and their parents, because whenever they didn't adapt, they basically had the threat of dying. I mean, in some countries, still, it's this decision in between. Okay, I need to prove something, or I need to adapt or die. And that brings me to people with disabilities. They might not immediately die from being excluded, but just imagine like the pain that people are going through when they can't see the secondary information that is presented to you or me, and when they miss out on communications that are crucial for their work life, that are crucial for their personal life, or for their safety if they're crossing a street. And that's why accessibility in that kind of sense, or universal design, has to be priority to save people and to make them feel safe and trust into the system that we build up.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So the difference between let's say disability as categorized by either motor, sensory, visual, or maybe hearing is part of motor, perhaps auditory, yeah, and inclusion, broadly speaking, in terms of race and everything else. That's a much bigger, more gray topic. Cultural, it's more
Religion.
gray, and as you said, religion, all of that, like gender. So all these topics that we have now, they're coming up. However, what you focus on is accessibility, and as you said, like, so I'm trying to picture how you created the umbrella, right, for your services as well, because I think it's very, very tangible what you're talking about in terms of what can you offer the end user in terms of accessibility, right, and mostly to do with disability, because then you can immediately convince the stakeholders internally of what needs to happen. So what does that process look like for you?
Normally, like, I currently have the luxury, like, okay, I'll give you two pictures. When I was working inside companies, like IT companies, I had to sell harder, especially on the non-machinery areas where there was no immediate threat for life and limb. So I had to sell harder, and I always had to convince people over years' time. So, hey, how about when we check the usability, how about we check for accessibility as well? Yes, Stefan, a very good idea. I think we do that later. And later never came in most cases. So it's much easier for now because I go to a conference or people seek me out already and they already want something. The trouble for them is they most of the times have no concrete budgets because no company that I know of has yet a budget specified for accessibility. But it needs budgets because design had been shortcutted so much in the past decades that designers and developers are doing not even the bare minimum because accessibility should be a bare minimum so that that the internet is accessible for more people. That's what it was originally intended for. But going back to what the process is, so people seek me or us out because I'm working with 3 other amazing people. And we do a workshop with them, with many more stakeholders than just designers or developers. Also management and lawyers are there sometimes. And we let them slip into the skin of people with disabilities by giving them certain tasks and then operating on their own websites or on their own platforms and trying to fulfill certain goals with the aspect of visual impairments or other physical impairments. And then they start to realize through that process, oh my God, that's what I'm harming and doing through my negligence. And that is like most cases the work that we're doing because, as I mentioned before, many companies still lack the consciousness that there is a budget needed, a formal budget for accessibility that is outside of, let's develop something or let's design something. And what else, like for companies who are already sensitized, I do is like, okay, I help them build up their internal knowledge capacities. So then I help the champions inside that company get education. Then I give them sparrings and say like, hey, maybe you want to have a look at this. Maybe you want with your product to go into that direction. And I ask them basically just questions. And I do testings with them, with friends of mine who have different topics to deal with and let them give their expert reviews. And this is when their company is further and already has a budget for that. That is also a process, mentoring those people inside to get stronger and then build that up from inside of the company.
And you do that specifically for digital products or also for, let's say, hardware products and the whole value chain in terms of maybe from packaging to, let's say, the digital products, the whole?
Currently, exclusively digital products, but I'm not averse to also going into the physical direction, but it's much more complex. I do have friends who are specializing in that area as well, who I'm partnering up with, but the physical demands of accessibility there are also a lot of norms that need to be heeded. There are also a lot of tests that need to be done. So it's not something to be rushed. It's something that needs careful planning and years of implementation, especially in building physical products.
So you have a company called Strategically. Correct me if I'm wrong, because there's 2 ones in there.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
It's this elusive acronym of accessibility. Like accessibility has an A and a Y and 11 letters in between. And people inside the bubble have become lazy because we don't want to write accessibility all the time. So we just do a shortening of it and say A11Y. And I advocate for strategic accessibility in the fact that it's a management topic, it's a design topic, a developer topic, and also content creation topic. Because if you are a writer or a content creator in other kind of sense using a platform, you're also responsible for accessible texts and accessible informations being catered towards your audience.
yeah, that's another dimension I just totally escaped me, because if I'm using a platform to distribute my information and that platform is not accessible, that means my information as a result is not accessible. Yeah.
Or if there is, like LinkedIn is a good example for, okay, it's not stellar, but it's okay, yeah, okay-ish. And if you then, for example, take your picture and describe your picture and have an alternative text for people who are hearing your content, then it's much easier for them to perceive your post as well. And I even have blind friends who are scrolling through Instagram and they just get the hashtags out. And that's it. I mean, they would love to get more information, so it would be awesome to just have information about what is depicted. But currently, they're disabled by the company's technology or the lack of knowledge by content creators of saying, hey, I put an alternative text for screen reader users in there as well so that they can follow me as well. And those are simple examples of content creators' responsibilities to use the tools that are there to communicate on multiple channels.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for putting that in the front, because now I feel there's an equal responsibility to share, right? Just can't put it on them, the let's say the product people, right? So one last question, and probably just feel free to answer it however you want it, right? So this consultancy model is quite difficult, because then you need to get in, convince the people at their different levels. I was speaking to Peter Burisma, who's like a design ops guru, right? And he told me the same thing. He's like, okay, so it's difficult, to convince people that you need design ops. So it's like someone saying, oh, you know what, you need more style. It's like, oh, sorry, excuse me, I think I'm stylish, right? So it's almost like this, right? So these are these horizontal topics that need a lot of buy-in. So design ops, I would say, accessibility, I would say usability engineering as another one of depending upon the industry that they're part of, right? So is there anything else on the top of your head that you feel is a very good services-based business, as you're saying, facilitation, where you come in and you can share something that can add value to the product, and this is for designers who've been in the field. Do you have anything at the top of your mind that could be an interesting idea? That could get into a stakeholder buy-in position, and it's like, okay, this is something that you can add value to. It's like an agile coach, right? Agile coaches have the same thing. They come in, they teach or show what agile is, right? So
I mean, from a behavioral economics kind of perspective, it makes sense to also go onto utility. It's not the usability part that is interesting if there is no problem that you're solving. So, I mean, that's a hard sell, because it's basically going towards companies and saying, hey, your baby is ugly. And as you mentioned before, it's like, it's as if you were going in and say, hey, you lack style, you need more style. But utility is something that can be proven through usability tests. can be disproven also through accessibility or usability tests. So it highly depends on those two. But those two are just like accessibility and usability are just symptoms. And utility is the argument that you're going for. Like there is a specific need that you're fulfilling or a problem that you're solving that people are aware of and have enough pain to be able and willing to pay for it. Because then that's what triggers economists. And yeah, that's what I would want many more designers and developers to do is like get into management and spread that word. It's not the features that we need. It's more what problems can we solve, and is it the right problem, or is it not a problem to be solved by technology or design?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, another thing that comes to mind is generally culture and culture economics, I would say. So
Yeah.
it's this whole idea of like culture can become really expensive, good or bad, right? And
Yeah.
if we can tangibly get in and tell the companies what bullying is, what ignorance is, what all of this as a structured package,
Yeah.
and that's why I find your services really cool. Like when I started this discussion with you, I said you have a clear
Thank you.
brand, accessibility, right? And it's like Stefan for accessibility. That's clear. And then there are these opportunities within the space that I feel are there for a lot of people to come in and share, build on their experiences, and then create these services and then help these companies to overcome some of these challenges, right? That can be facilitated through experts.
Yeah. Yes. Spot on. I mean, there is so many ways to be productive in that kind of sense. It doesn't matter if you're a psychologist who is then interested in coding or in managing. It doesn't matter if you're an architect who is then becoming a lawyer, or basically it's always the same. So we are all kind of designers. We're all in our ops and we're all having it difficult. So there is no free lunch, as they call it in a very good book that I'm currently reading, which is called Misbehaving. It's a recommendation. It's a real funny book. And basically free lunch meaning there are opportunities to contribute, but the path itself is going to be dry and long and hard. So learn to enjoy it. And not saying like learn to enjoy the pain. I'm just saying learn to find what you enjoy to do and then be content doing it, as I am with accessibility, because I'm personally drawn to it. I love it. And I am frustrated that the lack of awareness is still very wide. But that is a fact. I cannot change the fact. I can only change the future by telling people in a calm manner what the other facts are, what are the numbers, what are the people, and what are their stories. And I do love that because in that moment, I think I make a difference, or I choose to believe that I make a difference, and that's making me happy. And so I think the biggest advice for designers or developers out there is like, do whatever makes you happy and do it with a great passion. And it doesn't really matter if people are easily buying into it or if it takes longer. If it takes longer, it's much more worth to pursue in most cases, unless it's not solving a problem.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for dropping the bombs, the truth bombs, right? Yeah. So
Thanks for that.
And it was great, lovely talking to you, and I respect your time, and I think we should maybe have a follow-up later on and talk immediately about accessible design and maybe some of the tips and tricks that you might have for people who might be seeking your services, perhaps, for their products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much.